Hello and welcome to Scaled Down Customs. In this session of build videos, I'm gonna work on the F-150, the Ford Raptor truck. So let's, and this is a snap tight kit, so I wanna see what I can do with this one. So let's open her up and see what we got. Some nice chrome wheels, a chrome bumper, some exhaust tips. I'll probably strip most of this off and re-chrome it back up. Some nice looking tires. Looks like the BFG tread pattern. I like those tires a lot. Those are nice looking tires. Nice door cards. Some other interior parts, the disc brakes and calipers. Looks like the chassis is all one piece. The exhaust lines, axles, everything is all molded in. So that's going to be a little more challenging to paint, but we'll see what we can do with that. Interior looks pretty basic. Looks like we've got some floor mats and a center console. Dashboard looks really nice. We should be able to detail that up pretty nicely. Some nice bucket seats and a bench seat for the back. Also, those look really nice. Power buttons on the side, so these should detail up nice as well. Then the external trim pieces, the grille inserts, things like that. Side mirrors, the black bumper, yeah, those will detail up nicely. So it looks like the body and the bed molded in two separate pieces. Body looks really clean. Panel lines, I'll probably scribe those down a little bit deeper, but those look really nice. Mold line is actually really minimal. Yeah, mold lines will come off easily on that. Nice crisp, distinct raised badging on the back. That's looking nice. That'll detail up nicely as well. And then looks like these are going to be straight through axles. Oh, factory tinted glass on the back half. That's nice. And then the windshield up front has some frosting around the edging, which will make masking and painting a lot easier. And then the sunroof on top. Headlight lenses, taillight lenses. Looking really nice. So it looks like the decal sheet is actually stickers instead of decals. So we'll see how that works out. And the instructions. All right, looks to be a pretty basic kit, not a lot to it, but looks interesting. All right, so let's start work on it. All right, so first things, I'm gonna go get all these parts cleaned up in the sink and get all the release agent cleaned off of there before we start any priming and painting. And then after I'm done doing that, we'll start with body cleanup by cleaning up the mold lines and doing some light sanding and getting ready for primer. All right, so what I'm doing is I'm looking for mold lines. Now the mold lines happen because of the molds come together, they infuse the plastic, and the plastic will start to squeeze out a little tiny bit where the molds come together. And they're usually on the outermost edges of the parts themselves and are basically not supposed to be there on the actual car. Sometimes if you run your finger along a little bit, you can feel just a little bit of a sharp edge, and that's where the mold lines are. And I'm using the black marker just to go over those so that when I sand them down, I know how much more I have to go to get all those mold lines smoothed off or sanded off. And usually the manufacturers do a pretty good job of trying to hide those. For example, the mold line kind of comes back here along the back of the door on the car itself, around the bottom, things like that. So the manufacturers do try to hide those, but there's just no real good way to do that I know of on the exterior of the body itself. So they'll try to hide them in the panel lines sometimes, which is good, but then they're a little bit harder to take off. So if they're on the fenders and things like that, you can just mark them and sand them off and they come off really easily. All right, so I got those mold lines all marked up, and to take those off we can do a couple things. You can use just the blade of your X-Acto knife and just kind of angle it, and you can kind of scrape along some of these lines around the perimeter and the undercarriage of the car. It's a little harder to do that on the body, plus you don't want to be scraping a blade across the body of your cars. Another tool that I find really useful is this, it's actually a mold line scraping tool, my Master Tools. The blade on this one is a little more blunt. It's not quite as sharp, so it doesn't kind of skip along the plastic as much as the number 11 X-Acto blades do, so it gives you kind of a smoother scrape along some of these mold lines. But again, you can't be using this on the body. So to do the body mold lines, you can use, these are just emery boards, and then sanding sticks if you want to do that. But for some of these curved surfaces, I prefer using like a Tamiya sanding sponge for that. Then we can just kind of go over those. And if I just rough that up a little bit, now you can see that a little bit more clearly, how there's a line there that's not supposed to be there on the real car. So that's the mold line, and that's what we want to take off. All right, and that's kind of more what we want. We want to just smooth, take all that black permanent marker off, and that way we know that the mold line is no longer there. It looks like I missed the mold line going across the face of the hood there. And so for sanding these off, you can use, I probably use the 600 grit sanding sponge the most. 400 might be a little bit too aggressive, especially for the bodies. You can use the 400s for maybe the mold lines on the undercarriages and things that aren't going to be quite as visible, but the 400s, especially for the bodies, might be a little bit too aggressive, leaving some pretty deep scratches in there that you have to work a little bit harder to get those off. So I'll usually start with a 600 and then kind of go over it with an 800 maybe if I want to, but I find that the 600 is a pretty good all-around beginning sanding sponge for getting the body ready for primer and paint. All right, another thing I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to use my Tamiya panel line scriber, and I'm going to take these panel lines just a little bit deeper. I like to do that before I get too far into sanding, because if your panel lines are really shallow, you can actually sand right through them, and it makes it a lot harder to re-scribe them again if you need to. And I think this is a 0.2 tip on the Tamiya panel line scriber, and I find that I use that thickness the most with this tool. All right, so I got the body all scribed out, sanded down, ready for some primer. Got my mistakes filled in. So for my primer, I'm just going to be using the Mr. Surface 1000 by Mr. Hobby, just the rattle can primer. I've been pretty happy with this stuff lately. So for the body, I'm going to be using this. So I'm going to go get a couple coats of this on there, and then I'll be back in a minute. All right, I got that primer on there. That went on so smooth. And of course, like I always do, I actually went on really thick with it. And man, that just goes down so smooth. Anyway, I've got a couple little dust spots in there, and I just want to smooth off a little bit more. All right, so I'm going to wet sand this down in preparation for paint. So I just got my regular bucket of water, and then this is a 3000 grit sanding sponge by Tamiya, but I've used it, so it's probably more like a 4000 grit by this time. Then I've got a 3000 automotive grade wet dry sandpaper if I need to use that, but I think I'll stick with the sanding sponge. All right, so got her wet sanded down. I did burn through the primer a little bit on there. I just kind of wanted to smooth that down a little bit more. I'm not going to worry about it too much since the primary color is going to be red anyway. So for the color, the paint I will be using is going to be the Gravity Colors Ford Ruby Red. This is a two-part paint, so the more metallic goes on first, and then this is kind of a clear red that goes over it, the B part. So I'm going to get the inside of this sprayed. I'm going to spray the headliner with the Tamiya semi-gloss black just to get that dark, and then I'll mask it up, and then we will paint the Ford Ruby Red. I got the ruby red on there. That color came out really nice. I'm pretty pleased with that. So I've been debating if I should, 1, make these into decals, or 2, put the stickers on then clear coat it, or clear coat it then put the stickers on. So going back and forth, I think I'm going to try to put the stickers on first and then clear coat it. They're going to be a lot thicker than a decal, but I kind of want to just seal them in there and make sure they stay on forever. So I'm going to get these decals on here, and then we'll be ready for some clear coat. Yeah, I don't like the way that looks. I'm gonna hand paint that on, which means I'll be hand painting on those as well, because they're gonna be, the stickers are probably gonna be a little bit too big for that, so we'll hand paint that on. Alright, that'll do it for the stickers. Those are actually harder to put on than the decals, I think. Especially these guys, to make sure I get them lined up, because they want to just stick so much. I thought that was a lot more difficult than decals, but I guess if you've never done decals, then stickers are probably okay. But anyway, so got those on there, and I think we're ready for clear coat. So let's go do that. So I got the clear coat on there, so I need to let that sit up for a few days. In the meantime, we'll start working on the interior and all the trim pieces, which will be in the next video. So make sure you stay tuned for that. That'll do it for this video. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you on the next one.